sorry Finn and Sarah, I got the video, so we're about halfway in. We're just going over the worksheet. We're going over the even problems of the worksheet. So if you have questions on any of the problems before 18, just email me or Isaac or Alexander or somebody, and they can kind of fill you in with the answers. All right, so we are 1 plus or minus square root of 13i times 1 plus I over 1 plus square root of 13i.
It's gonna be fun.
All right, there's a couple ways you could do this. The easiest way I think would be I would get rid of the I in the denominator first, because it doesn't really matter, I guess, because it's going to do the same. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. How do I get rid of the I in the denominator?
Multiply by a conjugate.
1 minus square root of 13i over 1 minus square root of 13i. All right, so I'm going to keep that to last. So the denominator, how do we get the denominator?
Square the first term, square the second term, put a minus sign between. So minus 13i squared.
All right, the top, FOIL method, or binomial square the first term, first times the second times 2, square the second term.
Thank you.
13i squared is the same thing as
Negative 13.
plus 1.
Negative 12.
And 13i squared is
Positive 13.
so that would be 14 times 1 plus I. Simplify, we can cancel out a 2, that's negative 6, minus square root of 13i over 7 times 1 plus I. Here we're going to have to use the FOIL method. Negative 6 minus 6i minus square root of 13i minus square root of 13i squared all over 7. Simplify the best I can, and I put the reals together. Negative 6 plus square root of 13 minus 6 minus square root of 13, I'm sorry, it should be plus I all over 7. And simplify the top a little bit more. No. No, I can't.
Can you move your stand a little bit?
So that's the final answer.
Yes.
It's hefty.
Did I do that right?
So could we also just FOIL everything at the numerator to begin with?
You could,
Okay.
yep. And then get rid of the, yeah. All right, number 20. All right, we're solving. Bring everything to one side. Can we factor? Is there any factors of 30 that will add to equal 7?
10 and 3. Or
10 and 3 or subtract to equal 7.
No.
5 times negative 6. Oh, to equal 7.
Nope. 5 and negative 6 don't add to equal 7. No, I think that's, I don't think there is, so we have to do this by graphing. So on our graph, we should get something like this. So we're looking for this point and this point.
Okay, so it doesn't touch the x-axis, so it's
So
just
does that touch the x-axis? So therefore, this would be,
negative infinity to infinity.
no, I wanna know where it equals zero.
Okay, so no solution.
No, solution does not equal zero. Yeah, we could have done this quadratic formula as well if we wanted to do that. 7 plus or minus square root of 49 minus 120 over 10. And we notice this is a negative 71. So I know that's an imaginary number, so therefore I know there's no real zeros. So I can say there's no solution there as well. So either by graphing or quadratic formula, either way.
I still
Yes.
don't understand how you got no solution.
Alright,
You just couldn't.
again, when we're solving this, we're looking for what?
Common.
What the x is that will make that equal to zero. So I'm looking for x-intercepts.
Mm-hmm.
So when Isaac graphed it, the graph looked like this.
Oh,
Did it cross the x-axis?
and it was, since it was equal to, there's no solution?
Did it cross the x-axis?
No,
So is there any x-intercepts?
no.
So therefore, there's no solution. Alright, if we did it by quadratic formula, as I did here, do the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, I find out that I get a negative square root, or square root of a negative, which is an imaginary number, correct? So there's no real zeros for the x. So that also tells me no solution.
But if it, say like if we were doing like the inequality and it was greater than, would that still have an answer to it? It'd be like.
If it was greater than zero, then
infinity,
yes, it would.
infinity.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Alright, 22. Absolute value is less than, so that is a conjunction or a disjunction.
And,
Conjunction.
And, alright, so is the absolute value isolated?
Yes.
no.
Yes?
Oh, yes.
So we're gonna write it down once the way it states. Write it down again, changing the inequality sign, changing the sign. I wanna use interval notation. So that means it's going to be greater than -8, less than 4.
If that's interval notation, what's the one where you put like the V sign in the middle of the two?
It's still an interval notation, but that'll be an or.
Okay.
Alright, for sake of time here, we're gonna skip over to the word problems 34. Flare fired from the bottom of the gorge is visible only when the flare is above the rim. If it is fired with an initial velocity of 112, and the gorge is 160 feet deep, during what interval can the flare be seen? And again, we got h equals -16 t squared plus v subscript o t plus s or h subscript o. And again, you're in a canyon, so here's my canyon. Alright, we're firing the flare from down here. So it all depends on where you want your reference point to be. If I want the reference point on the ground, then my initial height is
Initial height's
Zero.
-160,
0.
or, yeah.
My initial velocity is
112.
112t. Alright, I want to know when the flare can be seen, and therefore the height of the final height of the flare has to be what? as I said, it depends on where your reference point is. I always like to have my reference point where I fire the flare from, right? Makes it a little bit easier, right? But you could, if you want your reference point up here, then this would be 0 and this would be negative 160. It's totally up to you what you wanna do.
Yeah.
Right? So that means 160 here. Bring everything on one side. Alright, if I ask you to do it graphically, you can punch that into your calculator, looking for your zeros. If I ask for it to do algebraically, then you use your quadratic formula to do that. But you can do this graphically. So 16t squared minus 112t plus 160.
You get 2 and 5.
2 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Does everybody agree? My graph looks like this. Here's my zeros. This is 2 and this is 5. All right. Where is my? Where would my graph be seen? Or my flare be seen?
At 2 seconds, or between 2 seconds and 5 seconds.
So therefore, we want 2 parentheses 5.
Not at 2 seconds.
If you're standing up here and it's right here, most likely you won't see it yet.
Do we need to put seconds, like parentheses 2, parentheses 5 seconds?
Not necessarily. You could though. Okay. Alright, so flip back to number 26. Again, you want to bring everything on one side. It's greater than, so it's going to be a 4. Alright, I want a factor. Factors of 6 that will add up to equal 5.
Negative 6 and positive 1.
Add.
Negative 2 and 3, or negative 3.
Correct? So x equals 3 and 2. My graph looks like this. This is 2 and this is 3. I'm looking for everything that's greater than 0. So I need this part and this part.
So it will be negative infinity and negative 3 in parentheses.
Or it's not
Oh,
negative
I'm sorry,
3.
that was the wrong problem I'm reading. Yeah, and 2 in brackets, and then 3 in brackets, and negative.
Alright, we know brackets because it's equal to. So, alright, 30 and 32, you're going to do it by graphically, so you're going to do your graph on your calculator, and then 28 you can solve by factoring again. Alright, so your test is tomorrow. I will go over this worksheet, make sure you know how to do everything in this worksheet. If you know how to do everything in this worksheet, you should be fine on your test tomorrow. Any questions? Alright, have a good evening.